people who just suddenly are like, now everybody's gay. It's like, people have been gay. They just didn't have an online platform to talk about it, or they were in the closet, or they just didn't tell you because you suck.
Yeah, exactly. Literally. What's going on, Internet? Welcome back to the URL versus IRL podcast. I am your host, Bree Lynch, and we are officially in the first episode of 2025. Now, I'm sure all of you guys have your goals set for the new year, but I want to introduce you to one that maybe you didn't think of before, and that is to be a little bit more understanding and open-minded in this new year. So, to kick things off, we're all going to learn something a little bit new today, okay? So let's roll the intro music and get into it. You guys, welcome to the podcast. Today we've got Casey and Bird on the podcast.
Hey, how's it going? Welcome to 2025.
I know. I'm so excited for you guys to be here. Bird, you've been an active listener for a while on the podcast.
Almost since the beginning.
That's so sick. Thank you so much for listening. That makes me feel like my heart is so full. Have you liked the new episodes with Casey so far? They're so
awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much. And thank you for being here today. I think before we kick off any real conversation and get into the bread and butter of this episode, I think it should be made perfectly clear what the goals of this episode are.
Yes.
So what we're going to be talking about is the LGBTQ community, as well as what it means to be a non-binary person. And I think we want to start this off by making it perfectly clear that the only goal of this conversation is to raise more awareness.
Yeah, enlighten people.
To educate people, and maybe people to be able to expand their tolerance and to learn something new about something that could be uncomfortable. I think this is a topic that we're going to get into that might be very nuanced for a lot of people.
Yeah, and you know what? I feel like so many people get like uncomfortable because they don't know what to do, because they don't know where is like crossing a line and what's not, and then they just get afraid to like ask questions at all, which I'm sure you've probably experienced.
Yeah. I don't love the word like tolerance for that reason, because like just being tolerated feels uncomfortable.
Okay, yeah. Absolutely.
Kind of,
Thank you for the correction.
The more people learn about each other, the more you can like expand your point of views and be kinder and have more grace for those around you.
That's a better way to word it, and that is the absolute goals of this.
That's exactly why we're here. So, Bird, you use they, them pronouns, right? So, could you like tell us the story, I guess, of like how you even came about that? Like, how did you even figure out what the word non-binary means, and like how you felt like that like related to you?
So I feel like it feels like a huge cliche at this point to say that it was Tumblr, but it was Tumblr.
I never had Tumblr, so I don't even know.
You weren't a Tumblr girl?
No, I didn't have MySpace either.
See, you come...
I know!
What?
I was born of MySpace, truly, but Tumblr was... I started on LiveJournal. LiveJournal was like the beginning of being online for me as like a person with my own voice. And then I got to college and Tumblr was just starting up, and I had just started fashion school, and I got addicted to Tumblr. I would stay up all night, like going through blogs, like just on there. It was so exciting. And there was so many new things and so many new kinds of people, and there was just so much more internet. Okay. So I finally get on there, and a couple years into being on there, I'm reading more queer people's blogs. I'm like discovering so many different communities on there. And I'm starting to realize a lot of the stuff that I'm like a little bit curious about and like searching, just like, why am I so curious about this? Why does it feel so personal? And then over time, really slowly, it starts clicking for me that like the feelings I've felt my whole life and the weird kind of outsider energy that I've had my whole life had a reason. All of it had a reason. And all the terminology I'm seeing for like non-binary or agender or all of the different spectrums of gender expression and stuff like that started to feel like words for things that I experienced that I never had language for.
Okay. That's dope.
So I was seeing people with the same experience, and they were sharing words that brought them together, and I was like, oh, that kind of describes me.
Okay.
And then I started kind of floating the pronouns with some of my friends, and it all kind of began like in the cosplay community. I was doing cosplay and going to anime conventions, video game conventions, And I've noticed one of the things that goes on there, it's that it's a really good sandbox to explore identity.
Okay.
When you put on a costume, you can be anybody. So I was dressing up as all kinds of characters. I could be a Gundam pilot one weekend. I could be Link from Legend of Zelda another weekend. And the way I felt when I was one of these characters was like completely different than how I felt in my day-to-day life. So it was a really good world to explore that in. And it was, you know, also I saw a lot of like friends be like, I think I'm a trans woman.
Oh, wow.
In that same world, because they'd spend a few weekends a year for a few years dressing up as women and then not bringing that home with them. And then realizing that's who I've been all along.
Especially if you probably get like a feeling of like emptiness after experiencing something like that.
Yeah, I think we all get really sad after the end of a convention anyway. But then coming home and putting your regular clothes on and being kind of a mundane person, and like all of your friends for that weekend or all of your friends on Tumblr are respecting your identity.
So did it feel like isolating from the real world? Like you had this community that was internet based that was really affirming of your experiences and who you are. Like, did that provide like any like, I want to say like cognitive dissonance, like translating into the real world?
Yeah, it does feel like kind of a separate self.
Right.
But it also feels like just a really extra fun vacation where you get to
That's
be more
awesome.
yourself and have like a really positive break.
Damn, that's dope. I guess for anybody that's listening that doesn't even know what the fuck non-binary means, would you mind explaining that to them?
Yeah, let's break it down.
Okay, yeah, so I'll do a little terminology.
Yeah.
I just want to preface that like I don't represent everybody and
Obviously,
my perception of it. All of these terms are just a descriptor. They're not a box to put yourself into.
Damn right.
So you can use it to connect with others and to describe yourself, but it's not like strict rules and lines that you have to sit inside of.
Okay, that makes sense.
That said, so non-binary sits usually under the trans umbrella, but not always. It means you're living outside of the gender binary.
Okay.
So some people perceive it as like you're between man or woman and it's a spectrum between those two ends. But the reality is it's so much bigger than that. It's so much more colorful than that. There's so many endless ways to express ourselves. Not all non-binary people identify as transgender. Some people are just okay with who they are but feel non-binary and don't want to change anything. Other people feel very transgender. They want to do more with it. They want to take hormones. They want to express themselves a little bit more with it. It's up to them if they want to take the labels that they want to take.
So non-binary people, most of them use the pronouns they, them. Do you think like right?
Not
or no?
everybody. So
Okay.
it's the most common one. That's all I would say. People will start with, like, they'll just add they as, like, an option. Like, she, they, he, they, something like that. That's a good, like...
Transition, maybe?
That's a good, like, when you're first coming out, I'm like, this is what everyone uses for me, but I'd like you guys to try this name and this pronoun. And then you may stay with a combination of pronouns. I know people who have a selection of pronouns that they prefer, and you can use any one of those. You can change mid-sentence.
Yeah.
It's just descriptors. And then there's also more personal, like neopronouns, which are not the common, like he, she, they.
I think there needs to be a clear distinction for people that are coming at this with absolutely no background knowledge or no other information. There is a clear distinction and difference between gender and sexuality, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you able to go into those differences a little bit? Just so like people are able to have like a framework of like, we mean this, but not this. Because I think sometimes people hear like non-binary and are like, are they gay? Are they straight? Like,
We're all gay. Every single one of us is actually gay.
Okay.
Yeah. Everybody on this planet, actually.
Everyone.
I truly do not believe that anything is as straight as it seems.
No.
But yeah, gender and gender expression are different things than sexuality. So you can be a non-binary person and still have specific genders that you're attracted to. You know, like we have the bisexual umbrella that includes like pansexuality and all the stuff under that. You can be non-binary and gay or lesbian. Like That's also a hot discourse topic online, but you absolutely can. We've historically always had a huge range of gender expression just under lesbians, and like gay men have such a range of gender expression, but all of it is gay and male. So you can have any gender and gender expression, and that's separate from your sexuality and the relationships that you have with other people. Your gender expression may affect who's attracted to you and why, but the two things are kind of exclusive in the terms that you can choose.
Because I guess, like, as far as, like, being non-binary goes, that's, like, who you are as a person and how you feel versus, like, your sexuality and what you're attracted to and the kind of people that you're attracted to is just, like, I guess what you like, right?
Yeah.
That's the best way to probably explain it, right?
Yeah. Like, your gender is yourself and your bubble and how you feel and express yourself.
Physically,
Physically, yeah. Or, mentally, physically, spiritually, whatever. And your sexuality is you connecting with others.
Yeah.
Or if you're not connecting with others, if you're asexual. It's not the same thing.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I'm glad.
Thank you for clearing that up.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that'll be hugely beneficial.
Yeah, because I feel like there's obviously going to be some people that listen to this podcast that are like, what am I listening to today? I have no idea what this is.
Yeah, we're at ground zero with some people, and that's okay. I feel like if you don't have all the information that you feel like maybe you should, then keep listening and maybe do some further research after that. And
yeah, absolutely.
Get on the learning journey. I mean, it's a good place to be. A lot of this is new information for me too, and I think the position that I have as like a cis woman, and I've never been around a big community, like I've never been in a big queer community. So like a lot of this information is completely new outside of the literature that I read. So like real life like conversation. So it's a lot of education for me as well, which I'm excited about.
No, it's really good. I'm glad. I'm sure that you're going to have like a bunch of questions that you're going to be able to ask.
Yeah.
I'm sure you probably had to cross like certain like barriers or break down certain barriers with people that just don't like get it. How difficult has that been for you? Or like, I guess how frustrating has that been?
It's kind of a never-ending process. As long as you're letting people into your life, you kind of end up having the same conversations over and over and over with new people. And you have to keep asking people to challenge their perception a little bit and to view you for who you really are.
Does it feel like a constant chore to have to ask that of people?
Yes, absolutely. And that's why I end up hanging out with a lot more queer and trans people, because I don't have to ask them to do anything. They perceive me and respect me in ways that I don't have to ask for.
Right.
They're just doing it automatically, and I can like relax and be comfortable.
And it's so fucked up that we're in a place in time where like some people just can't be accepting of like other, like I think like to be in 2025 and not accept someone at face value for what they're saying is their experience and who they are is just like so tone deaf.
That's what I'm saying, and I'm I'm so glad that we're like having this conversation as the very first episode of this year, because I just want people to like understand this and get it and respect people and be more understanding and open-minded and like want to learn, you know what I mean? Because I'm sure that it's probably super frustrating, especially with like the older crowd, like trying to get them to understand when they're probably going to say something stupid like, that's not proper grammar, how am I supposed to blah 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 blah, you know what I mean? Like that's probably so exhausting.
I have one for that.
Oh really?
Yeah, how would you explain that to like an old
when
person,
people
like
are
a
like
boomer?
That's not proper grammar, and I'm like, so you're at a party and everybody's left and you find a sweater and you pick it up and you go, did anyone drop their sweater?
Yep.
That's
Hell yeah.
singular
Mic
they
drop.
usage. It has always been grammatically correct. Everything. Don't ever argue with the gotchas though, because they're not looking for a logical response.
No.
They're not listening to whatever you say back.
It is the
I have
truth.
logical answers for everything, but nobody's listening.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I feel like that's probably got to be so fucking frustrating for you. Do you like, what do you do with older people like that are not understanding your gender identity? Do you like just keep fighting them on it, or do you let it go at some point?
I have 3 jobs. I don't have time.
Yeah, I feel that. Yeah.
I give up. I truly am just like, whatever. I'm not here to fight a fight every single day. I'm just going to ignore you and walk away from stuff. Like, you'll get to miss out on me and all the treasures I bring to the world. Like,
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, whatever. I used to argue a lot more, but like I'm in my zero dark 30s. I don't have the fight in me constantly. I gotta focus my efforts into places where it does matter and it does change people's lives, and I'm not here for petty arguments.
Yeah, good for you. So I guess something that a lot of like straight people that don't deal with the queer community or don't have a lot of people in the queer community in their lives, if they're having to have a conversation with somebody who's non-binary for the first time, they probably run into the issue where they misgender them by accident. Do you feel like it's actually offensive, or is it more just like, hey, I'm trying to remind you so that you don't keep messing it up? Is it more like an educational thing that you're just like, nope, this is what it is? Or is it like actually like offensive?
I give people like a few chances, because if it's like a couple times and you just slip up, like we all get like mush mouth, or just, you know, I call my friends the wrong name occasionally, and like,
I mean, parents do that with their children.
it just
like,
happens. Yeah. It just happens, like, if it's a slip up. But if I notice that it's a pattern, then I have to have a talk with the person and just be like, hey, I think you're projecting an identity onto me that I'm not. And I want you to kind of examine, like, what you're projecting and what you see versus the person that I actually am.
Good for you.
And I hate having that conversation.
I've never had that conversation.
Like, the thing that, like, of people, like, about, like, straight people commonly, like, fucking up on someone's genders. Like,
they gotta apologize so hard. And I'm like, don't.
But here's my thing. It is not the straight person's job. Like, it's not your place to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not obligated to comfort you for fucking up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what I've had to learn.
They have the big dramatic apologies.
Yeah,
and
it's
I'm
like,
okay, take your time on your own time to, like, learn a little bit and to kind of adjust who you're seeing me as, because I guarantee the person in your brain that you think is a girl or you think is this, that's not me. I don't know who that is.
And I think some people, when they misgender someone, even accidentally, and make that whole big dramatic, oh, I'm sorry, it's just like, acknowledge that you fucked up. Don't make it about you.
Right.
Like, stop making, it's not about you. Just making it about you in that instance is invalidating my identity in itself, is how I would imagine it coming off.
It's corny.
Yeah, like,
Go
why
off,
do you have to
honestly.
turn and make it about, like, why do you have to pull it? Like, why do you have to switch like that? Like,
And it's like, if one of your friends gets married or divorced and they start using a different last name, like, you switch them in your phone and you remember it.
Right.
Like, I'm not doing something too different from that.
Absolutely.
I feel like also, like, a little hack for some people that are not used to having to use they, them pronouns, like, just use the person's name. Like, if you really can't remember it, like, for a while, or you're trying to figure out how to adjust and how to do that, like, just use the person's name in conversation then, instead of referring to them as, like, he or she. You know what I mean? If, like, you're really having that hard of a time remembering to use they and them, like, until just you can finally...
practice it at home.
Yeah.
Like, you're by yourself, just say a few things about your friend. Just practice it. Like,
yes. Yeah.
Make it more comfortable for yourself instead of making it uncomfortable for the person that you're around.
And I think, like, a lot of people, like, aren't or don't have the exposure because they're not willing to put themselves outside of their comfort to be in communities where there are queer people.
Well, also people are afraid to be corrected.
Them vulnerable. Exactly, because you're vulnerable to correction, which makes you hesitant to even go out and learn something about that community, talk to anyone in that community.
Yeah.
Like, that keeps you in that bubble of uncomfort.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but we're also not, like, a monolith that is only spending our time together.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
We work everywhere. We exist in every field. We're all over the place. It's just, like, you absolutely have trans people in your life. The question is whether they feel comfortable enough to let you know that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's
so
huge.
you already know some.
Yeah.
Do they feel like you're a safe person to tell that truth to?
How do you feel like people can, I guess, project that they're a safe person for people to be comfortable around, or people in the queer community to be comfortable around? Like, aside from, like, wearing a rainbow pin everywhere that they go.
I feel like we all just kind of know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If
like,
you
can vibe check.
Yeah.
I mean, also, like, you can hear commentary and stuff. Like, you can hear, like, side comments and, like, you know, how people react to things and stuff like that.
Yeah, you can tell a lot from how people react to stuff. You can tell a lot about how people talk about other people in their lives. I check for other stuff. If I feel like the person is, like, a little bit racist, or they're talking about people's bodies, or they're making comments about women in their lives, they're a little bit like, oh, you don't see them as equal people. It's kind of like, I'm not telling you anything ever.
Yeah.
Right.
I have zero trust for you.
Well, yeah, because then at that point, it's like, really, is it even worth your effort and your energy and possibly your peace also if that person is not as accepting as you would hope that they are? Or, like, I guess, I don't know, if they don't even react the way that you would want them to, like, is it really even worth your peace at that point? Or should you just, like, keep your mouth shut? Which is not fair.
That's any individual person's choice if they want to have those conversations with people. Just me personally, I'm just exhausted. But, like, for anybody else, they might be wanting to, like, come into work and then tell their manager, like, hey, my coworker's being disrespectful of me, and, like, deal with that. At this point, I'm lucky enough right now that all 3 of my jobs, my bosses are really cool and respectful people. One of them is even non-binary too.
Hell yeah.
And they were like, honestly, you existing helped me come out.
Wow.
So that was really cool.
Have you faced any, like, discrimination? Because when did you come out as non-binary? Like, how long ago was that? I know you said it was Tumblr, so I feel like that had to be a while ago.
So I feel like coming out is kind of like people perceive coming out as a thing that you do once.
No, you have to do it repeatedly.
Yeah,
every time you meet a new person. Yeah.
Keep doing, and you also decide which groups you come out to. So you can come out to your friends, you might decide to come out to your family or not. And then any job you have, you can decide whether you want to come out at work.
And I'm sure there's different levels of comfort that come with coming out to each of those
because people be
groups.
asking off-the-wall fucking questions that they have no business asking.
And also, like, I would imagine, like, one of the thoughts around work would be, like, again, am I going to be treated differently at the place that pays me to live my life?
Yeah.
If I tell them this deeply important thing about myself.
I don't start with it.
I would imagine it would be hard to start with.
Yeah, because I feel like I already, like, spent years just throwing resumes in and getting ignored. Like, the market's terrible. It's impossible. I feel like if I add anything extra to it, it's just worse. So I don't even start with that. I do feel like if people see me, they might already be, like, forming a thought that I'm not going to be a good employee or something. So I don't know what kind of discrimination I faced from people that I don't know. At work, like, I would kind of gauge it out and start there and then decide. But then I got to a point more recently where I was like, I'm no longer going to work anywhere that I don't ethically align with.
Good for you.
And that was a really hard decision, and it came at a big pay loss.
It takes a lot of guts to do that.
Yeah, it does.
My mental health became the most valuable thing on earth, and I was like, I had a salary, I had a life, and it was not a life I was happy with, and my mental health was completely in the trash, and a lot of things happened, and I had to really make a choice that, like, at the cost of making less money, at the cost of my life being a little, like, more risky, I wanted to save myself and only ever do things that I believed in.
Hell yeah.
Do you feel like that has served you to only be beneficial moving forward since you've made that decision?
I think I'm a completely different person. I think every aspect of my life has changed after that. I think that was, like, one of the biggest changes I've ever made.
That's huge.
Wow, holy shit.
And then since then, I've been able to be out at jobs. I've been able to be at jobs where my boss is proudly putting, like, rainbow pride flags, trans pride flags, like, up in the shop.
Hell yeah.
One of my jobs, they changed the employee rule book to include trans protections.
Wow.
They put every employee's pronouns up on the website. They changed a lot of stuff.
So I have a question now that you mentioned, like, policies about trans protections, because I'm in a space of policy and social work where I read so much policy about the LGBTQ community and specifically trans people, and there's so much legislative work being done around that. But do you think that is, like, do you feel represented by that given that you identify as non-binary, or do you feel like maybe there needs to be political advocacy work specifically geared towards, like, getting rights for non-binary people, like, included in, as well as rights for trans people?
Look at Casey trying to make a change. Go off.
Because I feel like that can be limiting if you're seeing, like, because I see, like, oh, like, a pro-trans
So you're seeing
policy.
them kind of separate. They're not separate things. Like, I feel like the majority of non-binary people fit under the trans umbrella.
Okay, good.
So trans rights affect non-binary people.
Of course.
Any kind of bills, like bathroom stuff, healthcare stuff.
I wanted to bring some of
job
that stuff up today.
protections, literally anything that's affecting that community is affecting non-binary people, is affecting non-gender conforming people, is also affecting people of different sexualities depending on how they choose to express themselves.
Yeah.
It's literally like what affects any of us does affect all of us. It's our community.
Absolutely. I just didn't know if there was like a feeling of like you want like this, if people want there to be like that specific designation in policy, or but that makes sense that it falls under that.
No, I think
umbrella.
we all kind of operate under trying like a rising tide lifts all ships kind of thing. Like we're all trying to make sure that we're like everyone in the community is taken care of, and anyone who dislikes non-binary people dislikes trans people is already like lumping us in together anyway.
Yeah, I feel like in the world of advocacy, like it all goes hands in hands. Like I feel like housing rights like go hand in hand. Like if you support like housing policy, you're in turn supporting people of the LGBTQ community.
Yeah,
like,
it's one of the
supporting
biggest
mental health
problems.
rights, like supporting livable wages. Like all of those policies still all benefit people of the queer community, because research has continuously showed us that things that are issues like not issues but like things like substance use disorder, mental health, homelessness affect the queer community at much higher rates.
The percentages of trans people who are affected by homelessness, affected by mental health, commit suicide, are affected by hate crimes is so much higher than like the general like cishet population. It's really scary because a lot of people lose hope or are just met with less opportunities, are discriminated against. There's just a lot going against everybody.
And I feel like especially at this point in time, I mean, I read today, like I was on the legislative website, like the House of Representative website, and there was like 5 different anti-trans bills that were just introduced for 2025. Like
that's so fucked. That's like literally gave me the chills when you said that.
And one of them, this was in the state of Texas. All these bills were put into the House of Representatives in the state of Texas, was that specifically like you're able to sue somebody who is performing drag.
What?
One of the other bills was that in interscholastic sports, if this is passed, I will read it. Hold on, because I have it and I don't want to misspeak.
Oh, shit.
And, like, I just want to have that as the overarching conversation of, like, what is at stake. Because I feel like people say, like, talk about rights in a term of, like, well, what is actually affecting you? And, like, these are the things that are so impactful.
Yeah.
People talk about it as if we're, like, asking for special treatment and special permissions.
You guys are
it's like,
fucking asking for equality. It's not that hard.
Right.
Equity or equality. It's like we want to be able to live our lives the same way other people are living our lives. It's just we're facing different things. And people are acting like, oh, you need special treatment. You're, like... your little princess who needs a lot of extra stuff. And it's like, no, I want my friends to have access to, like,
basic
healthcare.
fucking
I want them to not get kicked out of their housing.
Yeah.
I want them to not lose their jobs when they come out.
Wow.
But the case law that I was reading, it was in Texas, and it says it is a law talking about interscholastic athletic competition and requirements for physical examinations and genetic testing.
I'm sorry. So these older adults who are sitting in the government want to examine children's...
The people making these laws are predators.
Like, red flag, red flag, red flag, red flag. It's so disgusting.
Predators.
Yes.
Like,
thank you for breaking that down in a very basic way, because I feel like we needed that.
Anytime people are like, I want to check kids' gender, like,
Right.
you creep, you pedophile.
Yes.
Right.
No, everybody should turn around and be like, get this guy away from children forever.
Yeah. And the
This
fact
is
these people are
sicko
allowed
behavior.
in office is fucking wild.
Like, you're sitting there writing, how long is, like, this proposed bill, how many pages of this guy thinking about kids' genitals? Like, that is disgusting.
So it's 4 pages, basically delineating what the state of Texas will do when this is enacted. It says a student may not compete in an interscholastic athletic competition designated for a particular biological sex if the student's chromosomal sex does not match the biological sex assigned at birth, as described in subsection A. The determination shall be made based on clinical evidence, including genetic testing results provided by a licensed medical professional. What parents are consenting to this?
You know what parents.
In Texas, I definitely fucking do.
Yeah.
I definitely fucking do, but like, what?
I want to add something about, like, the chromosomal stuff. A lot of people are living their lives not realizing that they're intersex. And there's so many other chromosome combinations between XX and XY.
Thank you.
There's so many other things that can happen, and you either might not know or you might know. Some of those people are transgender. Some of them are non-binary. Some of them are just choosing to live as whoever they've been assigned. Some people end up going to a doctor when they're like 40 and we're like, why am I infertile? And then they find out they're intersex and their chromosomes are different. The other thing about anytime you want to define gender under very strict rules, you start to get down to racism and phrenology.
Okay, go off.
Tell them.
Because
Go off.
if you're going to describe, like, what is a woman look like? How do you know you're looking at a woman? You start to get into descriptors that are usually based on, like, Eurocentric beauty standards.
Go off.
And you are going to cover a lot of stuff that in other cultures, other countries, other races does not necessarily define a woman. And then you end up with all kinds of discrimination against people who are cis women but might look different. And it's like, if you are looking at a woman who has features that you consider masculine for a white person, you're just being so crazy racist.
Yeah.
And, like, other cultures historically have also recognized that there's more than 2 genders, and they have cultural, like, placement for that. But it's really under colonialism that they've tried really hard to wipe that out and wipe out history of that.
God damn.
That is the depth that people aren't willing to go to.
Absolutely.
So
people are afraid of that.
The enforcement of the gender binary always comes down to white supremacy, colonialism.
Like everything else in our country is rooted in white supremacy.
God, it always comes down to that. So I really need people to think about, like, the way that you define man or woman. Like, are you thinking about white people? Are you, like, what are you thinking? Are you thinking about one specific culture? Are you thinking about specific things about people that, like, would really hurt somebody's feelings?
Like, why does it fucking matter to you so much? Also, like, why are you so fucking bothered? That's control. What's crazy to me is people are, like, so bothered by it, and they're like, I don't know, I just can't deal with this, or I just can't this, or I can't that. And I'm like, what the fuck does it matter to you? Right. Are you that person? No. So shut the fuck up.
People want to control the children.
I want to get back to the children. I see so much. I'm from white trash little fucking Republican town. And Facebook is always sounding off about they're brainwashing the kids about...
You can delete Facebook. It's okay. Life goes on.
I know that. Sometimes I just like to observe silently.
Casey likes the Facebook wars, though.
I love Facebook wars. But
you have a stronger stomach than me.
Yeah, but I see so much sentiment that people are saying, well, they're brainwashing the children about gender studies, and they're pushing children to be trans, and they're pushing children to be non-binary. Like, no, what? Like, what do you have to say to that?
Actually, you know what? Also, like, I feel like something that I hear from a lot of, like, older people now is, like, everybody's some sort of gay now, or trans, or, you know, homosexual, whatever, because of the internet.
I have one for each one.
Yes. Okay,
Let
good.
me do this one and then that
one.
So, the conservative playbook is that they accuse everyone of doing the things that they're doing in order to obfuscate what they're doing.
Okay.
So they're covering their tracks because they literally are brainwashing kids. The way they want to get rid of the public school system, they want to take away all kinds of transparency from the education system so they can get away with whatever they want. By having abstinence-only education, by having religious-based education, that actually is brainwashing kids.
Mm-hmm.
So they're saying that by giving kids a broader education, by like teaching them about themselves and their bodies, by teaching them a wealth of information, that's somehow brainwashing. But it's like, no, one of these things is guiding them away from everything they can know about themselves in order to teach them shame and control.
Mm-hmm.
You can, like, if you spend your life in shame and not learning about yourself, like, they've accomplished their goals.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're essentially just giving the kids the tools to express and
Yeah.
explore themselves in a way that's meaningful to them.
Yeah, but
Right.
they don't want to do that. They don't want to do that.
They don't want their kids to do that is the difference. They don't want their kids to do that.
Giving your kid a science book, giving your kid a dictionary isn't brainwashing them.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not what brainwashing is.
You want your kid to figure out what kind of career path they want to be on, like, and who they are in that
10.
sense.
Yeah, exactly.
By giving them a really, really limited scope of the world and telling them this is the only thing you can have and the only thing you can be is brainwashing them.
Absolutely.
So it's just a flip.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like there's such, like, the way that they frame it is, like, any education about your gender expression is, like, negative. Like, we shouldn't be teaching them that. We shouldn't be pushing that. Like, why? Let's give them the tools. Let's give them the information. Because maybe then they won't have to struggle for so long with something that they don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but, like, if you read about Buddhism, or if you read about vegetarianism, or if you just read about all kinds of stuff and you learn what those things mean, and you're like, that doesn't apply to me, but now I know more.
Right.
And I can be nicer to people who are different than me. That's different than being like, you can only do this.
Right.
Like,
well, and I feel like people are like, oh, if you learn about, like, it's not like if you read and learn about this kind of stuff, you're automatically going to be queer. Like, it doesn't work that way.
You're going to know that it doesn't apply to you, but you'll relate to your world a little better.
And I feel like there's, like, the same sentiment around, like, people who are like, children shouldn't ever be exposed to drag. Like, do you think that children being exposed to that is going to make them do something or other?
Like you already do. It's already in so many comedy
right,
movies. Like,
right. Mrs. Doubtfire?
Right, Mrs. Doubtfire. Like, there's a whole bunch of other movies where they're using it for comedic effect. Right. And it's like, okay, but in some circumstances it's really evil, but sometimes it's comedy. And it's like, I think, y'all don't even know what thing you're arguing.
And I think that's the point, is the way they make it seem so evil. And when you break it down, it's not.
Yeah,
it's evil until it's to their benefit.
And like, there's a lot of cis people who do drag. It's just performance.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even.
They don't want to admit
that. It might not be tied to your gender at all. Right. You're just getting on stage and performing.
Yep.
But, yeah.
They don't want to admit that though. But I feel like even with some of these parents that are probably super against their kids learning about all this kind of stuff, they also feel like now at this point, like, everybody's gay and everybody's some kind of queer and this and that or whatever because of the internet.
Yeah. So they grew up without the internet.
Correct.
Or very limited internet, and they've never, ever been exposed to this many people in their lives. So there's an exposure bias that's happening because people grow up in one town and see the same couple thousand people.
Yeah.
Or might move to a different city and not interact with other groups outside of their own groups. And then you get online and suddenly the algorithm or whatever's happening is showing you so many things you would have never come across.
I hate to break it to you guys, but the algorithm is showing you that shit for a reason. Just saying. Anyway.
I mean, it's either showing it to you to get you out of your bubble, or usually the algorithms are working to stir controversy, and because fighting is engagement.
Yes.
And they're baiting you.
Yep.
And I hate to say that. Like, it sucks. Just avoid it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's people who just suddenly are like, now everybody's gay. It's like, people have been gay. They just didn't have an online platform to talk about it, or they were in the closet, or they just didn't tell you because you suck.
Yeah, exactly. Literally. That part. There's literally just more exposure to it now. Yeah. And I feel like, generally speaking, like, we were not supposed to see and interact with this many people as human beings just because, like...
It's overwhelming.
Yeah, we weren't supposed to fucking have this kind of access to people, period. And, like, now we just have so much access to people, to all of their inner thoughts and to what they do every day, and watch them get dressed and outfits of the days and like all kinds of stuff. Like we have so much fucking access to people, and now it's overwhelming, and people are just like, what the fuck, everybody's gay now. And I'm like, yeah, because we see pretty girls on TikTok. Like, I don't know what to tell you. You know what I mean? Like, these girls are hot. Like, literally. The fuck, you know? Yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah, I really feel like it's not because of the internet. I just think that there's more exposure to it now, and I think that because
we got to a point of like culturally it became a little bit more okay to be open about it. If you study history, art history, any kind of history, and you look back, there's so much about gender and sexuality that's always existed. Yeah.
Yep. You know, there was something that we mentioned a second ago before we got into the conversation about kids, where we talked about like mental health in the queer community. What are your thoughts on that? I'm just going to leave it blank and open.
Yeah. I think what we had talked about before was like making it clear that like it's not a mental illness to like be queer, like, and
oh my god, I hope we're past that.
I really hope we're
I hope so too. But I think that also like within the queer community, something that unfortunately seems to be like observed is that within the queer community, there's a lot of talk about mental health within the queer community, which is like fucked up, because I feel like a big part of the reason that there is such a big like mental health thing in the queer community is probably because of how they're perceived constantly. Trauma, straight up.
If you spend your whole entire life being treated as an outcast, bullied, being mistreated by your family, having to lose contact with your family, like losing jobs and friends and stuff like that because of discrimination, you're not gonna just be a well-adjusted, happy person all the time. Like, a lot of people are like depression, anxiety, PTSD, everything.
Yeah, they're fucking fighting every day with new people every day.
Or there's people who find that they have a lot more support for like more difficult mental health problems. And they have a lot more support for that in the queer and trans community. This is my like embarrassing middle school story.
Oh. I can keep this off if you want, but go ahead.
No, it's okay. I can tell you. So, like I said, I always felt like when I was really little, I was like, okay, I was getting like tomboy a lot.
Yeah.
And then once I like outgrew tomboy a little bit and everyone hit puberty, and my friends were still kind of like treating me a little bit different, and I was like feeling a little bit different. And I was always hanging out with the guys. And where I lived in South Jersey, there was a billion punk bands. And I would go to all the punk shows. And the bands were, like, low-key misogynist. And were like, we don't hang out with the band's girlfriends. Like, this is guy time. This is that. But somehow I was always invited to guy time. And they're like, except you're a little different. I don't know why. So then the joke that they're like, you're some kind of little creature. You're like a little swamp monster.
A swamp monster?
And they're like, you're like a little brother.
What the fuck? I'd be so offended if somebody called me a swamp monster.
So that was like my nickname for middle school. I was like, all right.
Oh my god, that's so fucked up. Did you grow out of that or no?
No, I thought it was funny.
Okay, good for you.
I did grow out of that.
Good.
All those friends groups shifted a million times over because everyone had to fuck each other, hate each other, screw each other over. Yeah. So none of that stayed the same ever, but it was an interesting time.
Okay, I kind of want to talk to you about gender dysphoria a little bit. Can you like explain that to people that might not even know what that means?
So gender dysphoria is when you're feeling a disconnect between like the sex you're assigned at birth, like if you're perceived as male or female, and that doesn't connect with how you feel about yourself.
Okay.
So also like your secondary sex characteristics that come out after puberty, you start developing and you're like, oh no, I don't want my hips to grow. I don't want this to happen. Like, or I'm too short, or I'm this. And it's like, I look very girly and it makes me feel bad. Like dysphoria is just kind of like your body not aligning with how you feel. Or the way people perceive your gender not aligning with how you feel. And that is not a trans exclusive phenomenon.
Okay, what do you mean?
Tons of cis people experience that.
In what way?
So
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Cis people get more gender affirming care than trans people.
Okay.
Elaborate. And explain what gender affirming care is first for the people.
Gender affirming care can be anything from going on hormones to getting any kind of medical stuff relating to your gender. It can be any kind of like beauty stuff.
Okay. So like spironolactone for like hair growth, for example.
Or even like implants, I guess I would say.
Yeah, breast augmentation is gender affirming care, whether you agree with it or not. Women will get breast augmentation because they feel like that suits who they want to be better. And that is like a cis woman can have gender dysphoria, like,
or even breast reduction too.
Yeah, like that too. Like, she can just feel like, oh, I don't look as girly as I want to look. What can I do to look more feminine? And then get either different procedures. You can get hair extensions. You can get fillers. You can get your facelift. You can do all of that stuff. That's all gender affirming care.
Oh,
that all has to
that
do.
makes sense.
Yeah. Because I hadn't even thought about that shit.
So this is like getting into
like
personal, but like I have like hormonal imbalances, so like it leads to like there being hair on my chin, and I get super like self-conscious about that because I'm like, I don't want to have a beard, dysphoria. So like I'm able to take medication with it.
You're experiencing dysphoria when you have hair on your chin, and
right.
you're like, oh, I don't want to look masculine.
Right.
So that can affect anyone. Men too, because men will do hair growth treatment when they're losing their hair. They'll do testosterone. They'll do things to build muscle. Men will get top surgery because tons of men in this country grow breast tissue and they don't want it. They'll remove it.
Yep. Nobody finds anything wrong with that.
And the health insurance may or may not cover that, or breast reduction. That's all gender affirming stuff. That's all has to do with dysphoria. So yeah, cis people take hormones all the time.
Damn, that's crazy.
The fact that that's never even
the fact that I've never even like thought about it like that is wild.
So like, is there a negative connotation that comes with the word gender dysphoria? Because like I've heard in the past that like gender dysphoria is in the DSM, and we don't like to use the DSM to classify things. I think the DSM is very an awful way. I don't like using it.
That's personal.
But like,
people use the term a lot.
Because I know, like, it's characterized as something that's diagnosable in the DSM, and I feel like it adds that connotation of, like, it's an illness. Like,
they have you prove it. You have to, like, complain about it enough to your doctor to, like, get anything.
Okay.
So it's in there because it is, like, annoyingly necessary for
Is it, like, a vehicle
stuff.
to obtaining gender-affirming care?
Yeah, you have to really, like, play it up. Okay. I mean, a lot of people do experience it very, very intensely, but your doctor ultimately decides that, and they can be a cis person who doesn't understand any of this stuff, and they have to be fucked. Like, oh, are you crying every single day because you're not a boy? Maybe I'll tell your insurance to pay for this. Like, it's...
Shut the fuck up.
Honestly, like, oh, God, it was such a humiliating process.
When I was working in foster care, there was a youth that was on my coworker's caseload, and they wanted to receive hormone injections at the Mazzoni Center, and they had to be drugged through about 4 or 5 different court hearings and testify in front of a judge and leave it up to a man, cis white man, to give the ultimate power final say as to whether they got that care or not. Yeah. They ultimately did get the care and treatment that they wanted. But it's like, why do people have to jump through all these hoops and barriers to live their authentic self? Yeah. Like, to prove that, like...
Well, also, why does somebody else get to make that fucking decision for them?
And why do you need to go through all these doctor's appointments to prove all of this, to get it, just so you can get what you want?
And we're literally going to leave, like... how I'm gonna live my life in somebody else's hands of their literal opinion. Right. Yeah. Like, their actual fucking opinion is what it comes down to.
Right. Yeah, and that's what it came down to in a courtroom.
That's fucking crazy.
You can still live as a trans person and have nothing to do with the medical system. Right. Like, there's other ways to do things, or you can choose to not do them and just dress a certain way, do whatever you want. Like, personally, I would like as little to do with my doctors as possible.
Mm-hmm. As most of us do.
I would assume that doctors don't feel like safe spaces.
No, it's awful. Very few do. I had a really, really, really good experience with the top surgery clinic that I went to. Mm-hmm. They're super great. Everywhere else, they're not even a client-friendly experience for any purpose. So
that's so fucked
it's not good experience for straight people to go to the doctors half the time, you know?
Yeah, no.
I can only imagine. That has to be tough.
Honestly, like, the one thing I forgot to add is that a lot of trans healthcare, like, so much of it started with, like, menopausal women's care.
Oh.
Ooh.
So like hormone replacement therapy, that kind of stuff, like started with women having like a rough time with menopause.
Oh, shit.
Okay, I didn't know that.
So they get
Damn.
prescribed hormones more than trans people.
Wow. Well, that's probably because it's left up to people's fucking opinions. Like, literally.
There's no laws that are trying to be put in place to regulate their access to that.
Yeah. But if your girlies are getting like lip filler, eyelashes, everything, like, that's gender care.
Wow, that's fucking crazy. Would you have any advice for like new queer people, or like I guess like
New ones.
Yeah,
we minted them fresh.
Yeah. Would you have like any advice for them, especially if people that are even in the thought process of like, maybe I am transgender, maybe I am non-binary, because I feel like that can be that could probably be even more scary than just realizing that you're queer.
And I think along the lines of that, to even bounce off of that so you can just answer it all in one breath, is like advice that you would have for people that are queer and are in unsafe positions where they can't live their authentic self. Because I think the position that I'm asking that question from is I work with a lot of teens that do not feel psychologically safe to live their true identity, and it leads them to experiencing a lot of maladaptive coping behaviors.
Yeah. So the number one thing above all things is find your community. I found my community through the music scene.
Okay.
There's a really big queer music scene in the area. I was able to connect with tons of trans people, and I think that was really life-saving. I also got into some volunteer work when I was in New York City that helped connect me with the anti-violence program. Or anti-violence project. And that connected me with trans people who were like going to protest together, and I got to meet trans and queer elders who were like at Stonewall. Like I got to meet actual people who have been through the worst of it.
Holy
So
shit.
you think finding an elder was helpful for you?
Finding elders, finding big sisters, finding even younger people that I was able to kind of help through their stuff. Anybody who wants to separate you on generational divides is just trying to take away your unity, and your power is in your numbers. Your strength is in numbers. If people try to separate you, like Gen Z this, like blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Your community has been through so much. They have so much knowledge to pass down to you. You're like, you have to connect between those divides because that wealth of information passed down to each other is how we're going to save each other.
And the struggles don't really go away. They just change shape. So the information from generations past is valuable to inform how to react in present times.
You don't have to do it by yourself. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to account for every single scenario, because if you have a community, you're doing mutual aid, people will have each other in different ways. Sometimes you have to leave your town or your city for that. And that's the hardest part, is sometimes you have to go somewhere else.
I know this might sound like a dumb question, but where would be like a good resource for even people to even figure out where the fuck to find their community? Like, let's say that somebody's like just not, I don't want to say curious, but like literally right at the beginning of figuring this out about themselves and like realizing like, oh, this relates to me a lot. And like, I feel like I identify with this. Like, how would somebody even find their community, I guess?
That's hard to say. I feel like everyone has kind of different lifestyles and like different things that they're looking for. And I think your community should kind of relate to what you're actually interested in. And it's not like just because we're queer, just because we're trans, like doesn't mean we're all gonna like each other. We're not all the same type of people.
Yeah.
So music scene was really, really important to me. I think that's an easy one if you like that stuff. If not, try to find like volunteer work, community outreach kind of stuff, meetups for things. There's like support groups are an okay place if you're like really, really isolated.
They could also probably find like Pride in their area too.
Yeah,
maybe
Pride's
meet some
an
people
okay
there.
thing. I don't take a lot of stock in it because it's very much like a...
Do you think Pride's performative?
It's so commercialized. It's just people like hanging out and drinking.
Yeah.
But you can connect with people there. You can talk to them. There's like queer sports leagues. There's all kinds of different stuff that people will start up to be around their community and still do one of their own interests.
Okay.
And what would you say to any queer people who may not be able to change their immediate location but are in a situation where they feel is not conducive to being themselves.
Everything changes with time. I feel like even if you're stuck in a situation right now, remember that it's not permanent. And you can kind of set goals for yourself to like figure out ways that you can change things you're stuck in. I've been stuck in bad homes, very bad relationships, and it was just kind of like a carefully planning my way out. And you have to kind of prepare your safety net. You have to make connections with people that you know will have you when things do change. You have to just sort of gather information. Be patient. Know that like it's not the final thing. It's not the only world you have. Many things will happen to you in your life. You will be so many people throughout your life. You will be in so many different places. Like, give space to the next few versions of yourself. Like,
I think also if I had any advice for them, I would just say to also like protect your peace too. Like, definitely something that we were talking about earlier is like just assess the situation that you're in and don't feel like it's your responsibility to like come out to every single person that's there, because like that doesn't mean that just because they're within your vicinity that they are owed that kind of information from you and they're owed that kind of vulnerability from you. You know what I mean? Because I don't know, I feel like, as you were saying, like, you're not always safe.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And that's
like,
what I see. So many people that are bad home situations, bad relationships, and like the cycles. Like, we know that these bad
I'd go from one to another.
It's so cyclical,
Yeah.
and it can make you really start to have a negative self-view of yourself.
I feel like also, even if like you are not coming out to every single person, like let's say you are queer and you're not coming out to every single person, that doesn't mean that you're like closeted or you're working your way backwards. Like, you're just protecting yourself in a sense. You know what I mean? Would you agree with that or no?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I feel like
that's... I said, it's like a process of like the many spaces you can come out in, and you don't always have to do it.
Yeah.
If you just want to like chill and take time for yourself and like not have fights with people, you don't really have to. It doesn't take away from your credibility. It doesn't make you less queer. It doesn't change anything about you. You can just decide to like take yourself out of situations.
Yeah, and decide who you're safe with too.
Yeah, and find more people that you're safe with. Don't isolate yourself.
Right.
Yeah. It's like the same thing about like, I mean, even for like cis people, like talking about your sex life, like you don't do that with everybody, do you?
No.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
no.
You choose the certain people that you're willing to have that kind of conversation with, or you're willing to have that vulnerability with. Like, it's not like every single person that you fucking meet, you have to tell them everything.
Right. Yeah.
You know? And I feel like with a lot of queer people, unfortunately, like some people have like homophobic parents or families or whatever it is, and they're just like, I can't like come out to them. And then like for some reason I think that sometimes people look at them as like closeted, or like, oh, were you actually queer then, like, because you haven't like told everyone. Like, it's not everybody's business,
right?
You know, it's like you and your partner or whoever you're choosing to date or however you feel within yourself. It's not really like you have to come out to every single person. Now, I guess another type of person that we should talk about in the queer community is allies. What kind of advice would you have for allies?
You have to back it up. You have to back up everything you say, because so much of the online experience is so performative. You can put a little rainbow in your bio. You can wear a pin. You can say this is a safe space. You can say anything online. Are you doing any of it? If you're just sharing stuff to your Instagram story, you're just posting about events that are going on. Are you calling your representatives? Are you showing up for stuff? Are you doing any outreach volunteer work? Are you feeding your community? Like, what kind of things are you doing? Like, are you backing up a coworker when the boss is like misgendering them? Or are you asking each other what you're being paid and making sure that person is being paid an equal wage to you?
Yeah, like, what are you doing offline?
Yes.
Like, that is where the work truly matters. Like, I think about it, and it's like, you've even mentioned in like our prior conversations, like, the queer community shows up so hard for so many other causes.
God, we show up for everything.
Yeah.
When I go to protests, every single protest I've gone to, immigration rallies, I've gone everything that I'm at, the Chinatown stuff with they're trying to build the arena in Philadelphia, and we've all been protesting it endlessly.
With Kensington, even
Kensington
like, the queer
stuff,
people are some of the loudest in that space.
Everything that I ever go to, I always see trans people at these events. They're so loud at these protests. We're here with the signs. We're here with our whole contingent. because there's so much like anarchist and socialist organizing going on in the queer communities. They're doing so much of this work and not receiving it back. We have our own
people are
stuff.
just simply posting online and then not doing anything.
Yeah, I think that's enough.
Like, we'll come out for every single, like, minority rights thing, and then when our stuff is up for debate, we're not being, like, backed up. We're not being protected in the same way. Like, those people aren't coming back and also helping us, and, like, we know that when we go to that stuff, we're not expecting a reciprocity for every single thing we do. We just believe in those things. We just want to keep fighting for those things, because those things affect our community, like...
Yeah, housing rights and all these rights apply to queer people, so let's show out, you know?
Like, we just want that energy back sometimes. If we're saying, like, hey, this, like, Florida, they're literally, like, killing trans people.
Right.
Like,
and you can back it up by doing research, like, reading literature,
if we're
by
saying, like,
feeding people.
There's hate crimes. We're not feeling safe. Like, make sure your trans friends have a way home. Give them some money for, like, a cab. Give them some money for food sometimes. Like, there's girls out on the streets. There's girls that are hungry. Like, help people. Like, if you are, you know, you're at Starbucks, you're at a concert, you're doing all your stuff during the week, you have a little bit of extra money. Think about, like, you'll see on Instagram people reshare these graphics that, like, someone needs rent because they're, like, about to get evicted. And you'll just kind of glaze over it because you'll see, like, 20 of them a week.
Yeah.
Maybe stop for a second, actually send one of these people $5, $20, like...
And think, why am I seeing so much of this every week?
You don't have to say you're doing it.
Right.
Right.
Just
because you don't get a gold star for doing good shit.
Yeah.
Please make sure your actions match up with what you're saying, because just saying that you're safe, we don't, like, that's not doing anything.
At this point, I don't believe you.
Like, great. Like,
yeah.
All right. I need help.
Yeah.
If you say that you're a safe person, but you still live your life within the confines of gender constructs, you are not safe.
Those are the people who, like, misgender me the most.
Of course.
Then they'll be like, I'm so sorry.
Right. You're trying to be an ally to your benefit.
So I think it's the people who have to, like, overshoot to make sure they're not seen a certain way.
Right.
And it's like, just be the person that you want to look like.
Yeah.
I always try to get anyone in my life, if you have time during the month, do, like, a few hours of volunteer work a month for any community. I don't care. It affects all of us.
Yeah.
I'm every week doing environmental stuff. I have friends who are out there feeding people. I have friends out there every single week doing harm reduction stuff. Like, get some Narcan distributed in your area. Just, like, do some of the work.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to argue online about sports. Nobody I know is playing sports. Like,
right.
My friends are facing homelessness. Like, go help them.
Thank you.
Write a note to your legislators.
Yeah. Call them all up. Be annoying.
Show up at a protest. Show up at city council meetings. Pay attention to your local elections.
If you don't have a therapist, your senator's voicemail works great.
Hell
right. Yeah. Go off, bird. Oh my God.
The way that I call my legislators and just dump every single thing I am anxious and stressed about in my life.
Go off.
Or I'm like, the food is getting expensive. Like, come on. Like, just call them. Like,
damn, good for you.
Get the stress out. It might.
And I've been in those places where they will listen. Like, sometimes they will listen.
Sometimes they won't.
Sometimes, and a lot of times they won't. But
if more of us
at a local level, people at some point in time will be responsive if you blow them up enough.
Yes.
Like, I've sent some representatives, like, upwards of 15, 20 email.
I live to make Cheryl cry.
If I could wear a shirt that said, fuck Cheryl Parker, I would. Proudly.
Seeing her cry that one day in person was just...
And she's in the
Cheryl.
biggest...
Oh, she's
Cheryl
so evil.
She is being evil in the biggest fuck around and find out city in the country.
Yeah.
Fuck around and find out
For
city.
anybody listening who doesn't know what's going on, Cheryl Parker...
the bane of Philadelphia's existence.
She came into the mayorship. What's the word for it?
She got elected as mayor as a Democrat, and her policies are anything but democratic.
Turned around, about face on her community, turned her back to all minorities, all of everybody, and only serves billionaires and makes only decisions that serve people who profit off the smallest people in Philadelphia.
What did she just, like, the color fucking blue or something? She just decided to run with that? Like, what the fuck?
She
It's a
is...
betrayal. It hurts, but...
She's so tone deaf.
We show up to those city hall meetings and
everyone shows up.
Everyone shows up, reads off a thing, and is like, here's things we need, here's what you're doing wrong. And then she's like, nobody likes me and my job is hard.
But the amount, and like, it's just so shocking because the amount of organizers in the Philadelphia community that have brought research to her and been like, what you are doing is going to kill people.
Yes.
Is going to cause death and the spread of disease and more harm and more cycles of poverty to our city.
You're going to ruin families. You're going to ruin neighborhoods.
Send more cops. Send more cops, though.
God, so fucked.
Anyway, I'm on a tangent. I hate, like...
Whatever
energy that you have for fighting on Twitter, just take it to your government.
Yeah.
In person, for real.
Damn.
Or take it to a coalition that can advocate on your behalf.
Yeah.
Anything that you feel stressed about, like, oh my God, I have to change the world, I have to do something. There's so many people who are already doing that thing. Mm-hmm. Find the person who's doing the thing you care about and join up with them. Mm-hmm. They're already organized. They're already doing something. Just give them a few hours, a few days of your life per month. Mm-hmm. You'll feel better. And you'll find community. Your community is right there.
And I always say, like, you can't ever change the entire world, but you can change your corner of it. Mm-hmm. You can make your own community a safer and better place to live just by putting a few hours in. And it feels so good, like, going out and being, like, just for me, like, being in the harm reduction group, like, the amount of...
I know so many
It feels like family. It feels like family.
Yeah.
I know that if my back were ever up against the wall, they're riding.
Hell yeah.
Because our side is fighting for loving everybody, and our haters are fighting for hating everybody.
Damn right. Wow, holy shit. You know, there's one more thing that I did want to bring up that I feel like we touched on a little bit earlier, and I feel like that's, like, bigger corporations and, like, workplaces and, you know, these big places like fucking Target.
Like the companies that feel the need to put out a statement, a blanket statement that says, we support X, Y, and Z, and then you give your money to all these awful funds and support awful politicians.
And I know my friends who work there are mistreated. I know they're paid shit wages.
Yes. What the fuck?
It's all crap.
I guess in a perfect world, what could they do better? I know, obviously, like...
It's labor rights.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
I don't need the t-shirts. I don't care. I'm never buying that shit.
Right. Like, the fucking queer people are not buying your shit, Target.
It's labor rights.
We're not doing that in June.
It's always labor rights.
Jesus. Labor rights and put your money where your mouth is.
You don't have to say anything about queer people. You don't have to print rainbow t-shirts. If you did nothing... and you just made sure you had strong workplace protections against discrimination and that everybody got paid well, the whole community would be so happy. We're not fighting for t-shirts.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Damn right.
And I think if companies were fighting for protections for a multitude of rights, like, that would also go a long way. Like, I think about Lush, who is a company that is notorious for standing on their stances of human rights and social justice.
Fighting animal testing.
Employees.
Are they bad to their employees? Because they don't. And I thought...
they do all that work, and then everyone I know who's
they
ever
donate
worked there
directly
has been,
to us at
crying
OpMB.
all the time.
They, like, donate pallets and
I'm
pallets
glad that
to our
they do
harm
that.
reduction
I know that their,
organization.
like store experience is rough.
Yeah, and I feel like at a corporate level... And that's so unfortunate to hear, because I feel like they were the one brand that I felt like was doing something good, because I saw them contributing to my local community.
Ever put your faith in a corporation.
Yeah, that's so
for
true,
any
though.
reason.
Damn, that's so disheartening to hear that they treat people like shit, because...
Nobody's doing it perfectly. Nobody's doing a great job. Like, literally that one guy who's like, I'm a CEO who takes a really, really small salary and makes sure all my employees get paid, and then it came out that he was, like, sexually harassing women. And never
one thing, it's another.
People.
God. Damn.
As we're closing out, I had an Instagram question from a listener who wanted to know, what are some ways that cis people can respect non-binary identities?
Mm-hmm.
So, beyond just pronouns, because I feel pronouns is, like, the most surface level thing that we're, like, asking. Like, just perceive us the way that we are and not what you think we are. Mm-hmm. Like, just adjust your mental image of us. Mm-hmm. That's the most basic one. The other thing I see a lot of is cis people tend to kind of celebrate binary trans people more.
Oh.
So
can you elaborate on that?
They're a little bit more like overcompensating for when people are like a trans woman or a trans man.
Mm-hmm.
And if that person is posting like, it's my 1-year anniversary of hormones, or like, here's a video of how much my voice has changed, or here's this, and like, I'm having surgery, and they have all these milestones, and cis people are like overly doing too much to be excited about it. And then all their non-binary friends who are just on this journey that's not like headed towards a destination and are just being themselves kind of have nothing to be celebrated for. And you have to sort of not focus on that stuff and not be like, oh, are you going to get surgery? Are you going to do this? Are you planning on hormones? Like, a lot of our journeys don't involve that.
So, like,
and
asking the nitty-gritty details is of, like are you
don't
going to do this?
expect
Are you
that.
going to do that? Like, what are you going to do with this? Like, shouldn't. That's uncomfortable.
Don't expect those things of people, and don't, like, do too much to celebrate when it is a milestone or when it is a thing like that, because that can be hurtful to people who choose to never do that stuff.
Not everybody aligns with that either.
Right.
Like, just not everybody feels... I don't want to say they need to do that, but that doesn't make sense for everyone within themselves.
Like, there's no end goal for some people.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very, like, the goals and the milestones are extremely cis-conditioned perspective.
Right.
And that's something that, like, cisgender identity is based really strongly around that. And that seeing people who don't really have goals and are kind of floating between things, like gender fluid people who are just exploring different genders, different days, dressing different ways when they feel like it, and kind of like changing week to week. They kind of don't understand what to do with that, because what's the goal of that? And don't worry about that.
Yeah. I feel like I don't know, like straight people don't have a goal for their gender in life. Like,
But
they
do. You
fucking exist, I guess.
You don't realize that you do.
In what way? What do you mean?
The way, just like the standard expectations, like people want you to get married. They want you to have kids. They want you... People are always asking you, like, when are you settling down? Where's your future husband? Where's the babies? Where's the grandkids? Like,
True.
You do have gendered expectations put upon you all the time. And you are expected to meet goals.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
And I think, like, cis people also have, like, gendered expectations of how they want themselves to be perceived.
Yeah.
Like, I know, like, you had made a comment to me once where you were like, I can't believe you're not queer. Like, you kind of, like, you look like someone who would be queer.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've always, so much of my life, like, in my younger years, I was called man voice. So, like, I was...
Oh, that's fucked up.
Like, do I look manly? Do I, like... give off man vibes? Like, do I give off, like, vibes, like, because I don't want people to, like, misperceive me. And I mean, it is what it is if people do think what they do and think whatever they want. But, like, I perceive myself as, like, a cis woman. So, like, to see that other people see me and think, like, oh, is she queer? Like, it makes me question, like, am I, like, what am I doing that gives off that look? So I guess, like, it does affect even cis people and how they think about their gender.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are going to treat you like a projection screen anyway.
Right.
The things people don't like about you are the things they hate about themselves. And the things that they're seeing on you might be things that are true about themselves. And, like, the weird shit that people come at me for is, like, that's not my problem.
Yeah.
That's a you problem. Figure it out. Like, so.
Yeah.
It's all projection.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, I had a question. I had some questions for all.
Let's
oh,
go.
Shit, I'm nervous.
Go.
What the fuck?
I low-key didn't. You sent them and I didn't even prep.
Did you read them?
I did.
Okay.
I did not get a chance to read them. I'm like, I love going into things completely blind.
It was like there was no reacts on it, nothing. Bree said that I can ask questions to both of you, so I'm not just being grilled the whole episode.
What's crazy is nobody's ever actually taken that opportunity.
You've asked a Capricorn to do something. I did the homework. So, talking about the gendered milestones.
Okay.
So now that you're thinking about what they are there some that you are feeling outside pressure for?
Oh
Absolutely.
my fucking God, every day of my life.
You're on Instagram, like you're seeing people posting that stuff. Do you feel like that's affecting you? Or are you just kind of like, you look at it and you're like, ugh.
You know, Casey and I actually got into a conversation about this in one of our previous episodes last year.
About, like, how often, like, I think, like, bridal showers.
Yeah,
and,
we
like,
even get a little bit of FOMO, actually.
engagements and,
Yeah.
like, there's so many things that, like, are depicted in the media as, like, what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
What if you just threw a party for celebrating?
Right? Like, and we don't think to do that. And
Yeah.
I think it leads me into the thoughts of, am I ever going to have the opportunities to have these celebrations or be celebrated in this way that makes me start to feel kind of left out of, I want to be celebrated in some sort of way, but I don't necessarily know if these ways of typical celebration are meant for me.
Mm-hmm.
I just wonder if the grilling and the questions are ever going to stop, because, like, I think that I've always been, as far as children go, I've always been kind of like, oh, I could have kids or I could not have kids. And I really need to have kids with the right fucking, like 1,000% right person if I'm going to have children, because there's a lot of people that I cannot stand. So I always wonder that, like, if I don't have kids, are the questions ever going to fucking stop? Like, even when I'm 40, is it going to be like, you know, now the questions are, instead of like, when are you going to have kids? Or are you planning on having kids? And blah, 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 blah. Is it going to transition to, oh, do you feel like you should have had kids? Do you, like, regret that you didn't have kids? Why didn't you have kids? Like, you're just going to keep living your life like this? Are you thinking about, you know what I mean? Like, when is it ever going to, I don't think that it's ever going to fucking stop. And, like, it's annoying because now I'll even get aggressive with people. Like, when people are like, when are you planning on having a kid? Then I'm like, there's no fucking, my left ring finger feels real fucking light. We want to have a conversation about that? Like, you know.
But that's even like a sequence of events that is given to you.
Yes.
People are like, hey, you need to get married. You need to have the kid. Where's the kid? Where's your ring? Where's this? Like, that's, if nobody put that on you, well, like, do you want that? Like, are you, if truly nobody bothered you at all, would you be even, like, thinking about it that hard?
Probably not. And I think that also, like, another part of the thing for me, too, is, like, everybody's like, the clock is ticking. Like, you're approaching 30. Like, the clock is ticking. What are you going to do? Yeah, it's fucking exhausting.
I think for me, like,
but it makes me self-conscious.
I know that I don't even want kids, but, like, I see stuff on the internet of, like, this is what everyone is kind of doing right now, and it, like,
on your side of the internet.
On my side of the internet.
I'm not on that
on
internet.
my side of the internet.
My internet is like, I just bought a weird synthesizer, you guys. Here's some beeps.
Yeah, on my side of the internet, there's kids born every week, and I on one hand, I'm like kind of grossed out by it because I'm like, ooh, kids, like, I know I don't want that, but then I'm like, I could think of everything, and I get giddy about thinking about everything around having a child except having the actual child. Like, picking out a name, how I would decorate a room, all the cute clothes I could buy. Yeah. The actual human itself.
The shopping is
off.
fun. The body horror, the gore.
Right. Like,
everything that happens to you scares the living shit out of me. I would never do it. But like,
I'm terrified.
Some people, that's what they really want. And yet, whether you want it or not, it's like, everybody expects it.
Right. And I think it's the expectation that people put on others. That, like,
none of us want expectations on it.
And what's crazy is, like, you can get
just trying to break out of that.
Yeah, and you can get into a conversation with, like, a random fucking person that's really not that close with you and start asking that kind of conversation.
About, like, with somebody on the bus, like, anybody will start.
Yeah, people at work ask me that kind of shit. They're like, "So are you married? Do you have kids?" I'm like, I'm a fucking 28-year-old teenager. What are you asking me right now? Like, what are you saying to me?
I was 24 in the office at work, and one of my coworkers came into my office, closed the door, and was like, "Have you ever had an abortion?" I was like, "At work? Why would you ask me that?"
My boyfriend's aunt, the first time I met her was on Christmas. And she asked me 3 times in one night if I was pregnant.
Are you fucking kidding me?
And it was like after I had gained some weight. First time meeting this woman, first family holiday.
Shut the fuck up. Yeah. That's so rude.
Did you turn it around? Like, are you?
No.
Do you want to be right now? Do you want to go in an empty room?
I was just so stunned. I was like,
not do you want to go in an empty room?
Just flip it, you know?
Holy shit.
It's so rude.
It is fucking rude.
But yeah, so that gets me into, that's just the warm-up question for my real question for you.
Okay.
How much of your appearance, personality, and life decisions are based on expectations from society?
Oh, God, don't even get me started on this.
Like, if nobody in your life, none of your family, employers, coworkers, the internet, anybody online, if nobody could judge you for anything, what would you look like? Who would you be?
Fuck.
I would be plump. I would be naked.
Go off. Honestly.
I would not have shoes on ever.
Yep.
I would be free roaming selling fruit somewhere.
Yeah.
By an ocean.
Mm-hmm.
I would get elf ear surgery and have a neck tattoo. And face
I would be
tattoo.
covered in tattoos.
Everything. Literally everything, yeah.
Yeah, I think I would also be covered in tattoos.
I'd wear my vampire fangs like every day. I wouldn't give a shit. I just want to look funny. Like...
Hell yeah. Good for you. Yeah.
I would probably cut off all my hair.
Yeah.
Like, I would definitely do that.
Yeah.
I only have bangs. I shave the rest of it.
I think I'd probably have a lot shorter hair than I do right now.
I think I would be willing to take more risks, honestly. Like, I think that would be, like, the biggest thing. I think that in my life, a lot of it has been led by expectations. Like,
yeah.
As far as, like, my job goes, like, that is, like, the only thing that I feel like I've done to break, like, and go against the expectations. Because, like, everyone in my life was very much like, don't go into social work. Like, so I feel like that's the only place.
Doesn't that seem like a women-dominated field?
Of course. Absolutely it is. So I guess in a way I still was kind of by expectations. Following. Yeah.
Like, if you really, truly had ultimate freedom to be any kind of person you can craft in any way, like, you'd be pretty different.
Yeah, you're right.
I would never work.
I think my clothes that I wear would be a lot different than what they are right now. Because I always look at how I look in clothing.
Yeah, I think I do that a lot as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think you would just dress for comfort?
I think so. I think I would wear whatever the fuck I felt like was cool looking instead of just like, oh, is this hiding this correctly? And is this going to make me like desexualized by people? Because I feel like even for myself with like having an account on the internet that was kind of big for a minute, like the one thing that I was always so afraid of was like being sexualized by people. I think that that's because growing up for me with like racing motocross and doing all these like tomboy things, I was constantly having people tell me like, oh, you're gay, you're lesbian, blah, blah, blah. So much to the point where I made up a fake boyfriend when I was in like, I think 7th or 8th grade. And that's where my trend of wearing baggy clothes came from, was because I was like, oh, this is my boyfriend's sweatshirt. Like, he's like a motocross racer like I am, and his name is this, and he's like 6'2", and blah, blah, blah,
and
blah.
I've like merged my entire wardrobe with my partner so we can share all clothes of any sort of gender.
Yep. Yeah. Same now. I mean, and I wear guys' clothing still to this day, and I think it's because it's formed for me at such a young age that I was like using it as like a defense mechanism for such a long time, even like down to like the perfumes and stuff that I wear are like more masculine a lot of the times. And I think that it's just because I was like always trying to convince people of this thing because I wanted people to stop fucking pressuring me because I didn't know back then. Like I was like, how the fuck am I supposed to even know? Like I didn't even know what that meant until you just fucking brought it up, and now I'm home Googling it on my fucking Razor. Like, you know what I'm saying? It used
to be, like, illegal to wear pants. Like, people used to be fighting for, like, the definition of femininity involved not ever wearing pants. And, you know, like, times change, people change, and, like, all non-binary people are asking for is this kind of, like, freedom to actually be the people that we are. And I think those rights affect everybody. Like, if we can have that, you can have that, you can have that. Like, everybody in the
more.
Right. Everybody in the community can benefit from the stuff that we're asking for, and we know that, and that's why we're asking.
That's huge. That's important.
Holy shit, I like your questions. What the fuck? Your questions are sick.
I wish I would have prepared.
I actually did read through these. I remember reading through them, but I was like, are you asking us these questions, or we're asking you these questions?
No,
and then I forgot to respond. Did you have any other ones?
I did a big ask of just asking you to think enough outside the box of yourself. And so many people are so scared to do that. And a lot of the judgment that they're placing on you is because they've been controlled into a box their whole lives. And they don't know anything else but continuing that cycle of pushing other people into those boxes. And they're ashamed of themselves and they're scared of your freedom.
That's a really valuable way of thinking about
They'll see trans people who are happy not meeting any expectations. They'll see us just completely free of all of those trappings, of all of the things that society wants you to do, and be like, you're doing none of that and you're happy.
And feel nothing but hatred towards themselves.
Yeah, and they're like mad that you just found ways to be free. Like, yeah, we can exist and we can love each other and we can find so much joy outside of the traditional timeline that we're given. And it's amazing. It's beautiful. Trans people create so many new ways of experiencing joy and love and, like, new things to celebrate. There's things I've celebrated I never thought, like, I never even thought of the things. The way people just, like, even the way, like, trans people, like, do get married, do things like that, like, the kind of celebrations they're creating, like, I've never seen anybody do.
Do they seem more intentional?
It's so personal.
Yeah.
Like, you're not following a script, you're not following a ritual. Like, you're creating something between you and your, like, immediate community, your loved ones, that is so specific to you, and it's so personal, and it's such a, like...
That's beautiful.
...act of self-expression and love that it's just, like, different from anything, and, like... When it comes down to it, like, we're all so unique and different, and all of us should have the freedom to be whatever person we want.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, that's all it is. Like, it's a big ask to take people out of the boxes.
Have you gotten into that, like, the conversation, like, the questions that you just asked us? Have you gotten into those conversations, like, in just regular real life? Have you asked, like, cis people that kind of question? Like, what would you do or what would you look like if you didn't have to worry about all these outside perspectives?
Yeah, I think so. One of my jobs, I work at a tattoo shop, and I love asking people, like, if you didn't worry about your job, if you didn't worry about anything, what would you do to yourself? Like, what tattoos would you get? What color would you dye your hair? People are, like, telling me, like, oh my God, I love your hair. I couldn't pull that off. And I'm like, says who?
Yeah. That's such a freeing question.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's, like, one of the most, like, deep-rooted questions I've
I feel like I'm
going
to be reeling on that question, like, even when we're done recording,
who
I'll
says
be reflecting
you can't
on
shave
that.
your head off? Like,
right.
You could look awesome. What if you got, like, a head tattoo that's only visible
Literally.
when your hair is shaved? Like,
yeah.
You could look so cool and tough. And, like, what if you did lean into that, like, perceived masculinity and you're still a woman? Like, there's butch women. I meet women who are, like, 60 years old who are doing, like, manual labor, and they're just regular-ass straight women, but they have, like, short-ass hair, talk really deep. And it's like, that's still a woman. Who cares? Like, just do whatever.
Holy shit.
Do whatever.
You guys, I feel like that's a fucking wrap. I feel like that's
a wrap. Do you have any other final thoughts? I really hope that people can take a lot from this conversation, because I feel like it was a powerful conversation.
I feel like that too, yeah.
That will lead to a lot of reflection.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have, like, you know, I've asked people a lot of things. I've asked them to see themselves outside of their boxes. I've asked them to look into volunteer work and look into activism and look into just doing something for their community, and asking people to see if the things that they dislike about others are actually things that they need to work on within themselves. Like, are the problems you're taking to other people just a sign of internal work that you need to do?
Yeah.
So I brought a lot of homework to the listenership. I'm sorry.
I'm glad.
I'm not sorry. I think everyone should be doing this stuff.
No, I'm glad. Like, I feel like we never send the listeners home with homework, and they should get some every now and then.
And critical,
new year, new me, baby.
Self-reflection is, like, needed at every juncture of your life to be able to develop as a human being. Like,
absolutely.
This is just one of the things that we should be reflecting on, amongst many other things, to make it more, to normalize these conversations. Because, I mean, I feel like this is going to be so off the wall for some people to listen to. Like, this is going to be such brand new information.
But that's good.
Yeah.
Which is good. I think we should
this,
create more spaces to have more dialogue.
If any of this makes you feel like a little rise of anger about something, just check in on yourself and, like, really, really take a look at, like, where those feelings are coming from.
Absolutely.
And slow down and sit with that.
Hell yeah.
That's a fucking wrap, you guys. Holy shit. I feel like we need a little round of applause right now. I'm like, that was so good.
Are you fucking kidding me? No way. Alright, talk to you soon on the next Your